The whisper that shook the palace began as the morning light filtered through the ancient windows of Windsor Castle, spreading that peculiar English softness that somehow made even the hardest truths seem almost gentle. It was precisely 11 minutes past 9 when the first hushed murmurs started circulating through the palace corridors, carried by staff members whose discretion had been legendary for decades. But today, something was undeniably different. The very air felt charged, almost alive, as though the stones themselves knew history was poised to be rewritten once more. Catherine, Princess of Wales, had always possessed an extraordinary ability to keep the world guessing, and today would prove no exception. For months, speculation had surged relentlessly across the globe. Tabloids churned out endless theories, social media exploded with wild guesses, and royal correspondents stacked breathless reports one on top of another. Yet the palace maintained its trademark silence, that impenetrable wall of discretion that had shielded the monarchy for centuries. But on this morning, that wall was about to crack open in a manner spectacular, unimaginable, and impossible to ignore. Prince William sat in his private study, fingers tapping a steady rhythm against the mahogany desk that had once belonged to his grandmother. The weight of the decision pressing upon him was immense, heavier than any crown or title. This was not merely the announcement of a name, it was a statement about legacy, about the future of an institution that spanned over 1,000 years, about honouring the past while embracing a world brimming with uncertainty. He thought of his mother, Diana, navigating similarly pivotal moments with grace and courage that had inspired a nation and the world alike. He thought of his father, King Charles III, and the relentless expectations wrapped around every royal declaration. And most of all, he thought of Catherine and their children, the family they had built together against odds many would consider impossible. The decision to welcome a fourth child had been anything but casual. After Prince Louis was born in 2018, the public had assumed the Wales family was complete, a picture-perfect trio. 3 children had seemed perfect, a tidy conclusion to their childbearing years. George, the future king, who carried the nation's eyes on him from birth. Charlotte, a princess whose confident wave and cheeky personality captured hearts worldwide. And Louis, the youngest prince, whose every expression at public events became instant internet legend. The Wales family seemed complete, balanced, content. But life, as Catherine often reminded William in private moments, rarely follows the script we try to write. The news of her pregnancy had shocked everyone, even some members of the royal family themselves. Catherine had waited until she was completely certain before sharing it with the world. She had learned from earlier experiences how overwhelming and suffocating public scrutiny could be during pregnancy. Even the hyperemesis gravidarum that had affected her previous pregnancies had returned with a vengeance, forcing her to cancel public engagements and retreat from the spotlight for several weeks. The press, merciless as ever, had filled those quiet months with wild speculation, even suggesting marital problems or health crises that simply didn't exist. But Catherine endured, as she always did, learning the delicate art of royal resilience from both shining examples and cautionary tales. She had watched Diana's every move, dissected and criticised by the world, and witnessed the toll constant attention could take on one's mental health and family life. At the same time, she had observed Queen Elizabeth II's steadfast dedication to duty, the way the late monarch balanced immense personal sacrifice with unwavering public service for 7 decades. Catherine took these lessons to heart, forging her own path, one that prioritised her children's well-being while still honouring the responsibilities she owed to crown and country. Even the birth itself was managed with near impossible discretion in the age of instant news and social media saturation. Catherine delivered at the Lindo Wing, as tradition dictated, but the usual fanfare was deliberately muted. There were no crowds of photographers camped outside for days, no announcements heralding the start of labour. Only a simple, carefully worded statement released afterward confirmed that mother and baby were healthy and resting comfortably. The sex of the baby had been shared, a daughter, their second princess, but the name remained a closely guarded secret. Now, standing in rooms steeped in centuries of royal history, William and Catherine were ready to reveal that name to the world. The communications team had been meticulously briefed. Official statements had been drafted, revised, and polished dozens of times, every word weighed for potential interpretations or misinterpretations. This was not merely a personal announcement. This was a declaration about the monarchy's future direction, about the values that would shape the next generation of royals, about finding the delicate balance between honouring tradition and embracing necessary change. The name they had chosen carried deep, lasting significance and was the result of weeks of careful consideration. These discussions hadn't happened only between William and Catherine. King Charles and other senior family members had been consulted, and each potential name was analysed for historical resonance, public perception, and personal meaning. Some names had been dismissed immediately as too controversial, others deemed too ordinary or too unusual. The final choice was a bridge between past and present, a tribute to those who came before and a nod to those who would come after. To understand the significance of any royal name, one must first grasp the weight such names carry within the Windsor dynasty. Each name is more than a label. It's a message, a declaration of values and priorities, sometimes a subtle or not so subtle political statement. When Elizabeth Alexandra Mary was born in 1926, no one could have imagined she would become Britain's longest reigning monarch. Her names connected her to queens before her, establishing her place within a lineage stretching back centuries. When Charles Philip Arthur George was christened, each name bore the weight of royal ancestors and the hopes of a nation recovering from war. The tradition of royal naming evolved over centuries, shaped by politics, religion, family loyalty, and public opinion. In earlier eras, names were chosen to honour past monarchs or cement political alliances. Names like Mary and Elizabeth, James and Charles recurred through the family tree like musical refrains, linking generations. But the 20th century brought change, just as it did to every aspect of royal life. Diana had broken naming conventions with her sons in ways subtle yet profound. William Arthur Philip Lewis represented a shift from the heavy Germanic names that had dominated the family for generations. Choosing William as the first name, rather than relegating it to a middle position, symbolised a return to English roots and a deliberate distancing from the family's German heritage. When Harry was born, the casual use of Harry instead of Henry suggested a desire for their sons to experience some semblance of normal life, even within the gilded cage of royal existence. Catherine and William continued this evolution with their own children's names, George Alexander. Louis honoured the king's formal title while adding Alexander, a name with no direct royal precedent in modern British history. Charlotte Elizabeth Diana made worldwide headlines for including Diana, the first formal acknowledgement of William's mother in a royal child's name since her death. The middle name Elizabeth paid tribute to the late Queen, while Charlotte harked back to George IV's daughter. Louis Arthur Charles completed the set, honouring Prince Philip, Uncle Louis Mountbatten, and including Arthur, a name beloved by the British for its legendary associations. Every one of these royal naming decisions had been picked apart by experts and amateurs alike. Royal historians penned lengthy analyses on the historical and political significance of each choice, while bookmakers accepted millions of pounds in wagers on everything from classic picks like Mary and Alice to more modern options like Grace and Ivy. The public, emotionally invested, felt a sense of ownership over children they would never meet, but who would one day represent them on the world stage. The pressure to choose the perfect name was immense, too modern, and critics might cry betrayal of tradition. Too traditional, and it might appear out of touch, a failure to recognise that the monarchy must evolve to stay relevant. A name that favoured one side of the family over another could spark accusations of bias or disrespect. Every angle had to be considered, every criticism anticipated, and every potential backlash meticulously addressed. William spent countless hours in the royal archives, combing through family trees and historical documents. He consulted historians and constitutional experts, seeking input on the appropriateness and significance of every option. Catherine approached the matter from a different perspective, weighing not just history, but the practical reality of daily life. How would it sound on a playground? Could their daughter be teased or bullied? Would it shorten naturally into a nickname she might prefer as she grew older? These parental concerns existed alongside the formal obligations of royal protocol. The couple also considered the international dimension. The British monarchy may no longer rule over a vast empire, but it remained the symbolic head of the Commonwealth, a voluntary association of 56 nations across every continent. The name they chose would be spoken by billions of people across cultures and languages. It needed to be pronounceable, culturally sensitive, and capable of representing not just Britain, but the global commonwealth that the monarchy now symbolically led. There were names Catherine loved, but William vetoed, and vice versa. Suggestions from family members were politely acknowledged and quietly dismissed. King Charles had his eye on certain traditional names, while Queen Camilla leaned towards something slightly more modern. Prince Harry, despite ongoing family tensions, reportedly sent a private message suggesting a name with personal significance to both brothers. Princess Anne stayed out of the debate publicly, but noted to a friend that any choice would inevitably face criticism. The late Queen Elizabeth had set a precedent for careful consideration when naming her children. She balanced tradition with personal preference, royal duty with maternal instinct, understanding that names mattered. They shaped public perception and established expectations that would follow a child their entire life. William and Catherine studied her choices, learning from her successes and the occasional missteps even the most experienced royals made. The revelation finally came through channels orchestrated down to the minute. At precisely 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the palace press office released a statement to the Press Association, following protocols established over generations. The words were simple, elegant, and carefully chosen to convey both joy and gravitas. The Prince and Princess of Wales are delighted to announce that their daughter has been named Rose Alice Diana. 3 names, each layered with meaning, set to fuel discussion for weeks. The first name, Rose, immediately sent ripples through royal circles and beyond. Unlike previous children's names, which had clear recent royal precedents, Rose was a fresh choice, a symbol deeply rooted in English history. It evoked the Tudor Rose, which had united warring factions and established dynasties. It also carried personal significance, honouring Catherine's grandmother, Rose, a woman who shaped Catherine's early years and instilled values of family loyalty and quiet strength that Catherine would carry into her own royal life. Rose also had broader resonances. It connected the baby princess to Rose Gilman, one of the Queen Mother's closest friends, who had offered unwavering support during the darkest days of World War II. It echoed Rose Windsor, a distant cousin known for grace and discretion, beloved within the family. The name struck a rare balance, traditional yet fresh, familiar yet distinctive, avoiding the pitfalls of being too common or too unusual, embodying the very deliberation William and Catherine sought. The first middle name, Alice, held equally profound significance. Most obviously, it honoured Princess Alice of Battenberg, Prince Philip's mother, whose remarkable life had only recently been fully recognised. Alice had been born deaf, yet learned lip-reading in multiple languages and became a formidable presence in European royal circles. During the Nazi occupation of Greece, she hid a Jewish family in her palace, risking her life to save others. She founded a nursing order and devoted her later years to charitable work. Her courage, compassion, and commitment to service perfectly mirrored the values William and Catherine hoped to instill in their children. Alice also reached further back into British royal history. Alice Maud, Queen Victoria's 3rd child, had been one of her generation's most influential royals, using her position to advance causes she believed in and defying the limited expectations of women in her era. The name connected the new princess to a legacy of female agency and activism, suggesting she might follow ancestors who challenged conventions and pushed boundaries. Diana, the second middle name, surprised no one but remained deeply moving. William had already honoured his mother with Charlotte's middle name, yet including Diana in their second daughter's name reinforced the enduring significance of the Princess of Wales in his life and legacy. 27 years after her death, Diana remained one of the most beloved and controversial figures in modern British history. Her name conjured images of glamour, tragedy, pioneering approaches to royal duty, and profound personal struggles. By naming their daughter Rose Alice Diana, William and Catherine ensured the next generation would carry forward Diana's memory, hoping she would continue her mother's commitment to using royal privilege to make a real difference. The public reaction was instant and overwhelming. Social media exploded with commentary, analysis, and emotion. Rose began trending worldwide within minutes of the announcement. Florists reported a surge in orders for roses of every variety, while baby name websites crashed under the surge of visitors. expectant parents rushed to add Rose to their shortlists, captivated by a name that balanced tradition with modern relevance. Royal correspondents scrambled to provide context and analysis. Television networks interrupted programming to discuss the announcement, experts dissecting the historical significance of each component. Some praised the choice as inspired, a perfect blend of honouring the past while looking to the future. Others critiqued it as playing it too safe, suggesting William and Catherine missed a chance to make a bolder statement about the monarchy's evolution. Contrarians argued any royal naming convention was inherently problematic, perpetuating hereditary privilege that feels out of place in a modern democracy. Within the family, reactions were more private but equally meaningful. King Charles released a brief statement expressing delight, noting the name honoured multiple family branches and spoke to the unity he long championed. Queen Camilla was photographed leaving Clarence House with a broad smile, though she declined to comment to the press. Prince Harry and Meghan sent a private congratulations message, a rare moment of warmth between brothers whose relationship had been strained for years, focusing on the joy of a new life rather than old disagreements. Princess Anne, true to form, offered her characteristically dry assessment. When asked about the name during a public engagement, she reportedly said, "It's a perfectly sensible choice," which from Anne constituted high praise indeed. Prince Edward and Sophie expressed their delight at the continuation of the Alice name within the family, noting its significance given Sophie's own middle name and her close bond with the late Prince Philip, as well as the nod it gave to some of the more distant relatives who valued family continuity. Even minor cousins and extended relatives, usually silent, seemed quietly satisfied by the homage. Even those who usually avoided public commentary on family matters found themselves drawn into the debate about what this name might signal for the monarchy's future direction, the subtle message behind every syllable. To understand why Rose Alice Diana represented such a carefully calibrated choice, one must look beyond the individual names and into the broader, often turbulent, context of the monarchy today, where every choice reverberates far beyond the castle walls. The British royal family was navigating treacherous waters, caught between competing pressures. The need to modernise while maintaining tradition, to be relatable while preserving mystique, and to justify its existence in an era increasingly sceptical of inherited privilege. Every choice, from attire to charitable causes, carried symbolic weight and potential controversy, with each decision analysed in real time by an attentive global audience. Every public statement or gesture had the potential to trigger both admiration and critique, often simultaneously. Choosing the name Rose, a quintessentially English name with deep roots in national symbolism, could be interpreted as a deliberate reassertion of the monarchy's connection to British identity. At a moment when that identity was being questioned and renegotiated, Brexit had fractured the nation politically and emotionally, Scotland continued debating independence, Northern Ireland's peace remained delicate, and Wales was asserting its own distinct identity. The United Kingdom was anything but united. Rose, the flower that symbolised reconciliation after civil war and the birth of a new dynasty under Henry III, represented hope, renewal and unity, and also subtly reminded the public that history often guides the present. Whether consciously or not, William and Catherine were invoking that symbolism, subtly suggesting that their family and the institution they represented could still act as a unifying force for a fractured nation. It was a bold and perhaps audacious claim, yet deeply traditional, reaching back to the foundations of the Tudor monarchy that had established royal supremacy in England. Their choice seemed to whisper that even in modern times, symbolism and ceremony could convey enduring meaning. The inclusion of Alice carried a different but equally profound message. By honouring Prince Philip's mother, William acknowledged his grandfather's lasting influence on both his personal life and the monarchy itself. Philip, the longest-serving consort in British history, left a void that still resonated through the family after his death in 2021. But more than a tribute, Alice embodied qualities the modern monarchy desperately needed: courage in adversity, compassion turned into tangible action, humility despite privilege, and service that went beyond ceremonial duties. Princess Alice's story of hiding Jewish refugees during the Holocaust had only recently become widely known, thanks in part to media portrayals and recognition by Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations, elevating her from footnote to a figure of genuine moral authority. By invoking her name, William and Catherine were aligning their daughter and, symbolically, the royal family, with values transcending nationality, religion, or politics, basic human decency, moral courage, and the willingness to risk everything for what is right, all qualities desperately needed in a modern, scrutinized monarchy. Diana, of course, remained the most emotionally charged element of the name. 27 years after her death, William's mother continued to cast a long shadow over the family. Her legacy was complex and contested. To some, she represented the best of modern royalty: warmth, accessibility, genuine compassion, and a willingness to challenge outdated protocols. To others, she embodied the dangers of emotional decision-making, media manipulation, and the prioritization of personal feelings over institutional stability. William had spent his entire adult life trying to honor his mother, learning from her triumphs and mistakes alike. He had observed how she used media attention to advance causes, but also how it ultimately consumed her. By naming his daughter Rose Alice Diana, William was declaring that Diana's legacy would neither be forgotten nor diminished. Her contributions to modernizing the monarchy would be acknowledged and built upon. The choice also acted as a subtle rebuke to those who had sought to erase or minimize her impact over the years. For decades after Diana's death, the royal family had seemed reluctant to speak her name publicly. Charles moved forward with Camilla, the Queen maintained studied neutrality, and only William and Harry had consistently championed her memory. Even with Harry's departure from royal life, William ensured that Diana's legacy would live on through Rose Alice Diana, a princess carrying forward her grandmother's influence for generations and signalling that the family could honor the past while boldly shaping the future. Of course, names alone could not determine destiny. The true test would be how Rose was raised, the values she absorbed, and the role she would ultimately play in the monarchy's evolution. Charlotte had already displayed confidence and charisma to thrive in royal life. George, as future king, bore responsibilities that his siblings could never fully comprehend. Louis remained young, his personality still unfolding. Rose would grow in the shadows of her siblings, the fourth child not expected to reign, but potentially pivotal in supporting and shaping the monarchy, quietly influencing its path in ways the public might not immediately see. Catherine understood this dynamic better than anyone. As a fourth child herself, she knew what it meant to exist outside the spotlight while still being shaped by family dynamics and expectations. She had observed her own siblings forge meaningful lives without the burden of excessive attention or responsibility. She was determined that Rose would have similar opportunities, that being a princess would not become a gilded prison from which there was no escape, but a life with freedom, guidance, and purpose. William shared these concerns, but approached them differently. He had witnessed what happens when royal children are so protected that they cannot relate to ordinary people. Yet he had also seen what occurs when too much freedom leads to public scandals that damage the monarchy's reputation. Finding the right balance would be a continuous process, requiring years and decades of reassessment as Rose grew and the world around her evolved. A future unwritten, full of possibility, and yet grounded in tradition. The christening of Princess Rose Alice Diana was held 6 weeks after her birth, a ceremony following tradition stretching back centuries, linking the newest royal to history while symbolizing hope, resilience, and continuity for generations to come. The day itself was marked by quiet elegance, subtle touches of personal homage, and a sense that a new chapter in the royal family's story had begun, one that honoured the past while cautiously embracing the future. The Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace provided an intimate, almost sacred setting, its ancient walls having witnessed countless royal christenings, including those of Rose's older siblings. The guest list was meticulously curated, limited to close family and a select number of godparents chosen for their personal significance, loyal friends and mentors to William and Catherine, rather than for social status or political influence. The photographs released after the ceremony told a story all on their own. Rose, resplendent in the Honiton lace christening gown worn by generations of royal babies, appeared serene in her mother's arms. Catherine's smile radiated a genuine happiness, the kind that comes from knowing her family was finally complete. William stood beside her, one hand resting gently on George's shoulder, the other holding Charlotte's hand. Louis peeked curiously at his new sister. Together, they formed an image of family unity that the palace hoped would define the Wales household for years to come. Even as official photographs circulated and commentators praised the event's dignity and grace, questions about Rose's future remained unanswered. What role would she play in the royal family's evolution? How would she navigate the peculiar challenges of being born into privilege while also expected to justify it through service? Which causes would capture her passion? What kind of person would she ultimately become? History offered clues, but no definitive answers. Princess Anne had forged a remarkable path as the Princess Royal, arguably the hardest-working member of the family, while maintaining a fierce commitment to privacy and a no-nonsense approach to royal duty. Princess Margaret chose a different route, embracing glamour and excitement, but also facing scandal and sadness. Lady Louise Windsor and her brother James illustrated yet another path, relatively normal lives combined with participation in key royal events. William and Catherine carefully studied these precedents. They knew they could not impose a predetermined path on their daughter. Rose would need to discover her own way, guided but never controlled, supported but never suffocated. The key was instilling values early, teaching her that privilege came with responsibility, that being a princess meant service rather than status. If they succeeded in that foundational lesson, everything else would naturally follow. The broader question of the monarchy's future loomed over these discussions like an invisible presence. Public opinion remained divided. Many older citizens supported the royal family, yet younger generations increasingly questioned its relevance. The Platinum Jubilee celebrations for Queen Elizabeth II demonstrated that affection for the monarchy persisted, but it was more focused on individual figures than the institution itself. William and Catherine understood that they represented the monarchy's best hope for continued support. Their approval ratings consistently outpaced other senior royals. Their family appeared stable and loving, resonating with ordinary people. Their children seemed grounded despite extraordinary circumstances. They had successfully navigated scandals and controversies that might have destroyed less resilient couples. They had shown that royal traditions could modernize without losing their essence. Rose's birth and carefully chosen name fit into this broader strategy, a controlled evolution honoring history while embracing contemporary values. They demonstrated that royal families could make personal choices rather than follow scripts dictated by tradition. By releasing carefully curated photographs and details, they satisfied public curiosity while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Yet strategy and calculation could only go so far. Rose was not a chess piece. She was a human being with her own personality, interests, and desires. She might embrace royal life or carve her own path. She might become a passionate advocate for important causes or prefer quiet influence behind the scenes. She might remain in Britain or seek experiences abroad. The name Rose Alice Diana provided a framework, a legacy, but not a destiny. As the sun set over Windsor Castle on the evening of Rose's christening, William found himself alone in one of the castle's many historic rooms, cradling his sleeping daughter. The weight of history pressed down on him, as it had throughout his life. He thought of every royal child christened in that same gown, of all the hopes and fears their parents had harboured. Some had lived up to expectations, others had not, yet all had strived to live with dignity under impossible scrutiny. He whispered a promise to Rose, one that no one else would ever hear. He would protect her as best he could, teach her that her title was both a gift and a responsibility, and show her that true nobility comes from character rather than birth. He promised to love her unconditionally, whether she embraced royal life or forged her own path. Most importantly, he promised to let her be herself, whoever that self might turn out to be. Catherine joined him, slipping her hand into his. Together they stood in silence. Two people who had bridged the vast divide between her middle-class upbringing and his royal destiny. They had built something real, worth protecting and nurturing. Rose was their fourth child, but far from their final statement. She was another chapter in an ongoing story, one that would continue long after they were gone. The name Rose Alice Diana would be spoken countless times in the years ahead. It would appear in history books, magazines, and debates. Experts would analyze it. Commentators would dissect it, but the most important fact remained simple. This was their daughter, a person whose worth had nothing to do with title or succession. She was Rose, and that alone was enough. The revelation of Princess Rose, Alice Diana's name, marked not an ending, but a beginning. As the Wales family grows, so too does the monarchy's story. What role will this fourth princess play in shaping Britain's future? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: the name she carries will inspire, challenge, and endure for generations to come. If you enjoyed this royal story, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment with your thoughts on Princess Rose Alice Diana's future.